Welcome to the Write Better Fiction podcast, the show that helps you, well, write better fiction. I'm Shane Miller, urban fantasy author, writing coach, and story geek, and each week I'll be talking to industry experts about the writing craft, publishing, and the business of being an author. Enjoy the show. Hello, fictioneers, and welcome to episode 13 of the Write Better Fiction podcast. Today I'm chatting to Sacha Black, aka Ruby Roe, all about launching her sapphic fantasy romance pen name. Sasha's a good friend of mine and we have a laugh during the interview, so stay tuned for that. But first, it's time for Question of the Week. Last week's question was, what do you do when you need to be inspired to write? Mary Van Everbroek said, I dance to smooth jazz sounds when seeking inspiration. Nice. And Angela Haas said, when I need inspiration, I start a new book, rewatch a movie I love, and turn to my author friends who inspire me every day. They motivate me to get my butt in the chair and write. I have to agree with you on that last point, Angela. I often turn to my author friends when I need some inspiration or a good butt kicking to get some writing done. This week's question is, which writing craft books do you recommend and why? Okay, it's time for my update from the writing chair. Obviously, I'm back from Mark Dawson's self-publishing show live in London, and I had a blast. Unexpectedly, I got to present on the main stage in front of 700 people with quite short notice, but I loved it nonetheless. There's nothing like presenting to a live audience and taking questions off the cuff. The energy in the auditorium was fantastic, and the questions I got asked were really insightful and inspiring. And speaking of inspiration, I've come back from the conference raring to get back to work. I got to meet up with existing author friends and make new ones. So basically, I got to geek out about books for 48 hours straight, which always lights a fire in me. My biggest takeaway from the conference was that I wish I'd started attending conferences sooner. This was my third conference this year, and I can't overstate how much the connections I've made have supercharged my writing career in a very short space of time. If you want early access to episodes and exclusive access to the Fictioneer community on Discord, where you can participate in things like Question of the Week and weekly accountability, you can support the show on Patreon for as little as $5 a month. Head over to patreon.com/writebetterfiction. When I reach 50 patrons, I'm going to start recording a monthly Q&A to answer all your writerly questions. Okay, that's about it from me, so let's get into the interview with Sasha. Hello and welcome to the Write Better Fiction podcast. Today I'm joined by Sacha Black. Sacha Black is a best-selling and competition-winning author, of course she is, rebel podcaster, speaker, and casual rule breaker. She writes writing craft books for authors and spicy sapphic fantasy romance as Ruby Roe, which is what we're going to be talking about today. She lives in Cambridgeshire, England, with her wife and genius giant of a son. Hi, Sasha. Welcome to the show.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. So I wonder if you could kick us off by telling us a bit about you and your journey into writing.
So I say this all the time, but I think if I'd been more self-aware, I probably would have realised that I was meant to be a writer from a young age. I recently got back in touch with the teacher. You know how we all have one of these teachers who was the one who like helped and inspired us, and he still remembered me, which I think is really interesting because obviously, you know, over the years you teach thousands of students, so the fact that he still remembered me and he was my English teacher kind of made me think, yeah, okay, this probably was what I was always supposed to do. But like all good kids, I went off to university and did as I was told, which was very unlike me. And I went and got a proper degree that would lead to a career path. And then, of course, you know, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I just did a master's, and then after the master's, I got a scholarship to do a PhD. At which point I was like, you know, I don't really want to be skint for another 3 years. So I diverted, but I didn't know what I wanted to do. So I just went for all of these generic project management, kind of like fast track management schemes in corporate places. Very, very quickly realized that was a egregious error. And so then sort of started drinking wine in the evenings and like ranting in a as an anonymous Sacha Black name online. And then was like, oh, I quite like this writing stuff. And then it, you just fall into like flash fiction groups and NaNoWriMo, and it just sort of went from there. And I started reading fiction again, because when I don't know if you found this, but when I was at university, I like read so much, like so many academic journals, I just gave up fiction.
Yeah,
It was just too much.
I couldn't read fiction at uni at all. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was sort of the time that I started reading fiction again. And I think like the first year I read like 5 whole books. I kind of laugh at myself. Yeah, I know, right? Like 5, wow. Now it's close. Well, now it's considerably bigger than that. But anyway, yeah. And then I did my first nano, and I can't quite remember if it was 2013 or 2014. But I did it then, and that was the beginning of everything.
Nice. Yeah, that's really cool. And it's funny actually how many writers I speak to that didn't know what they wanted to do when they went to uni. Like they just went because you should go.
Well, the interesting thing was I nearly did English.
Right.
And I think if I had, I would have been a writer a lot sooner.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because I loved English. And it was my highest grades, but I was told that there was no career, and what was I going to be doing? And so, the one thing that I'm going to be absolutely sure of is that I will tell my son to go and study something he's passionate about, because I don't think it really matters. So many of us don't use our degrees. It's just a piece of paper and a certificate to get the first job, and once you've got the first job, it doesn't fucking matter anyway. Oh, sorry, am I allowed to swear?
Oh yeah, you can swear. Say what you fucking want. Yeah, it's all good. I should have played with you then and been like, oh my god, why are you swearing?
How dare you?
You may swear, it's fine. So I've got a 3-part question then to start with. What inspired you to create the new pen name for the Ruby Roe books? Why keep it a secret initially, and why go public with it eventually?
So the inspiration, I think, has been part of a really big shift in me over the last 18 months to 2 years. I think a lot of us come to writing because we're seeking something, and that might be different for everybody, but I do feel like all of us are trying to reach for something inside of ourselves that we have either suppressed or we haven't quite worked out how to express it and be authentic. And I don't mean that we are inauthentic. I just mean that society has a lot of rules and restrictions and judgments and opinions on who we are, what we should be like. And so as a result, most of us, we just, like, our inner child just wants to be a good girl or a good boy or a good child. And so we adhere to those things, and then we lose bits and pieces of ourselves. And I think a lot of creatives are the ones who are desperately seeking to find that thing again. And that, I think, was what was happening to me. And so I came to writing straight fiction, because in my sort of formative years, that's all I'd read, because there were no sapphic books, or there were no LGBT books. And so naturally, our output is a product of our input. So that was what I was writing. And then the weird thing is I remember reading one of Claire Lydon's books years ago, and I didn't really cognize the fact that it was lesbian. Roll on a few years, I then start reading young adult like LGBT fiction, and then stumble across some sapphic fiction, and I loved it for a while, and then I was like, something is missing. And then I stumbled across Queen Takes Rose by Katie Robert, and that just blew my mind. Katie writes dark kind of fantasy romance, contemporary romance, erotica, all of this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh yeah, it was the smut that was missing. So that was kind of like the journey, and it happened alongside me doing a lot of self-work, a lot of understanding like my own wounds and trauma and all that shit, and understanding that actually I really didn't feel very valuable. I didn't feel like I was lovable. And that, I think, is because I wasn't being true to myself, and I wasn't really writing the things that I should have been writing. So, cut a long story short, it was a journey, both in reading widely and finding things that really light my fire, and also self-work and kind of giving myself permission to write the thing that I really wanted to write. In terms of why did I do it in secret, I think it's because I already have a platform as Sacha Black, the nerd who likes craft, and writing, saucy lesbian fiction doesn't really go with that. I mean, the irony is, when I think about it, actually, all I do in my craft books is dick jokes. So it probably was even closer to, Sasha but I didn't really think about that at the time. So anyway, I wrote in secret because I was doing this for me. And it was like the most freedom, permission-giving thing that I'd done, was to not tell a single soul what I was doing and to just write the fucking book. And that relieved pressure. There were no expectations, and all I did was have fun. Now, the reason for then going public with the pen name is because I realized that I love the camera and I love talking. And those two things are they're so integral to my marketing that the moment look, I'm not saying I've got a huge audience or anything, but people are clever, and I have a distinctive voice because there's so much of my voice in the internet, on the internet. Therefore, even if it took 6 months, somebody was going to find out. Especially if I use my voice to market. So I was like, I have a choice to make. Either I have to be completely anonymous, no video, no audio, no being me in the marketing, or I go public. And I decided to go public because I don't know how else to market other than by using myself to market.
Right.
And I know that's not for everybody, but that is how I market. So that was the first reason. And the second reason was because I realized that I have a complete disconnect. I'm like super precious about my craft and my writing and the story until that book goes to the editor. The minute it goes to the editor, I don't give a shit anymore. Like, it's done, it's over, it's dead to me, right? It's not dead to me, obviously, but it's that kind of
that part of the journey is dead to you, though, right?
Yeah. Well, and the preciousness, because then instead of it being my art, it becomes a product.
Yeah.
So it's that switch from craft and creativity into, okay, I'm a businesswoman now. How am I going to market this? And so Sasha wanted to be precious over the craft, and Ruby was like, okay, now we can market this.
Yeah.
Hopefully that answers.
It does. That's awesome. And you said two things there. Smut was one, and fun was the other one. And I've got two words for you. Chapter 3.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about chapter 3. We didn't prep for this, but yeah, since you mentioned smut and fun, why the choice to include the smut so early? I'm not, I'm sure most people who've read it aren't complaining, but why the choice to include the smut so early? And how much fun did you have writing those scenes?
Oh my God. I have realized that is one of my favorite things, is to write sex. Like, I absolutely love it. And I had no idea that this is what I mean about like suppressing and writing the books that we think we need to write. No, I fucking love sex. I want to write all about sex, like I'm not ashamed of that.
You shouldn't be. Why should you be? Yeah, cool.
No, but society tells you can't. How dare you talk about?
How dare you like sex?
You can't write about boobies. Like, how dare you? But it was just like, actually, I don't give a fuck what anybody thinks. I enjoy writing this, so I'm going to write it. And it's such a strange shift, because there was almost, I would say, like shame around it.
Right.
That feeling of like, this would be frowned upon. People are going to judge me. My family would judge me for doing this. But actually, judgment is self-judgment. It's our own perception. that we place on ourselves. And I just got tired. I'm so tired of judging myself.
Yeah.
So I've just stopped. And so that was kind of the reason for including sex. There's like twice as much in book 2. It's unbelievable. No, not twice as much, but there is more. But the reason for including it in early was twofold. One was a structural issue about enemies to lovers. So the book is enemies to lovers, and you can do that in one of two ways. You can start your story where the couple meet in the beginning of the book, and then they become enemies, which is going to create a slower burn story. Or you can have a faster burn story where they have prior history of being enemies before the book starts. And if anyone knows anything about me, I don't do anything slowly. So
really?
I know, it's shocking, isn't it? So I didn't really want to write slow burn. And so that was one of the reasons, was that I was trying to write this book and have the sex at the end, and I was like, this isn't working. These two are not, like, they don't hold off. They bang.
No, they don't.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay, like this is, so I had to go back and restructure the story. And also I would like to try to always to make chapter 3 part of my branding. And the reason for that is because most look insides on Amazon will show you 3 chapters. And so whilst I run the risk of being put into the dungeon on Amazon, I also set things up for people to know right from the outset what they can expect. So I have done it in this book. I'm pretty sure I've done it in this book. I have to go and check because I did insert a new chapter, but I'm trying very hard to have a sex in chapter 3 in every book going forward.
Nice. And I think Ruby Roe in the dungeon could work quite well for the brand too. So yeah. Can you discuss then the process of developing a distinct author brand for Ruby, including like logo, website, social media presence, all that stuff?
So this was in one way hard and in one way easy. So there was a lot of like looking at the market and looking what was there, and a lot of thinking about what I want and what I wanted to do. So there's the more intangible things, like knowing that there was going to be a lot of spice, like that feels like part of my brand. The whole chapter 3 thing, that's going to be, well, as far as possible. I can't, otherwise you're going to end up with a book that you do write slow burning, you can't, but whatever. That felt like it was part of my branding. In terms of like the tangible, the color palette and stuff like that, I just gave that all to my sister, and I was like, look, can you just create a new palette for me? But what I did was I sent her a lot of book covers in that genre.
Right.
And I said, here are all my comp authors. Can you create me a color palette that would match this kind of like feeling, this kind of vibe, and like work as an author palette? So she did that, and she also created the logos. She hand drew the Ruby Roe, which has now become my signature as well, which is pretty cool. I don't think I've told my sister that. I need to tell her. So yeah, and then the rest of it was all pretty strategic. So I examined the market, and in terms of like the covers, I wanted discreet covers, because lots of people don't want anybody to know that they're reading either spice or they're reading lesbian books. I learned a pretty hard lesson there, because I had in small letters, this is like a steamy lesbian fantasy romance on the cover. And I actually had a reader from a country where being homosexual is illegal message me and say, I know it's small, but I still can't buy your book because it has those words on it. So I'm leaving it for this series, but the next series I write will not have that on the cover.
Right.
And I know there are other authors that go the other way. So like Rebecca Thorne, she's on TikTok, and she makes a point of putting lesbian stuff everywhere. And that is one type of marketing, and mine's kind of the other. I would like my book to be accessible to as many people as possible. And then like even the name choice was strategic. So the surname is my stepdad's surname, because he was the one encouraging me to do this. But Ruby is a name that I have seen repeated time and time and time again in the sapphic community, whether it be author names or whether it be character names, or like on TV shows, you've got models who are called Ruby Rose. You know, so there was a ton of, like, there were a few other names that are used quite often in the community, and I sort of had this pool, and then I was like, you know, I really like alliteration, so I ended up going with Ruby. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but it was kind of like a, yeah.
No, it answers the question. And can you talk a bit about the choice to focus your social media efforts on TikTok as well?
Again, very, very strategic. So I looked at all of the social medias and decided that TikTok was the friendliest queer space. There is quite a big, like a lesbian thirst trap community, but also a huge Bookstagram community, Bookstagram, TikTok, whatever the book talk community. Yes. Words are hard. I'm still so tired after Israel. So there's a huge book talk community, and book talkers typically prefer steamy,
right?
And they prefer romance. That's not to say there aren't other niches on TikTok. There are, but I know there's a huge steamy reader population on TikTok, and there is a huge LGBT queer community, and it's pretty safe space. So that was the first reason for going with TikTok. The second reason is because I have seen a lot of people have really good success. I mean, TikTok is responsible for a lot of paperback sales of the book, and I just wish that I had more time to be more consistent with it. And when this next book comes out, I'm recommitting to, I've just got to get the book sent off, and then so this weekend, hopefully next week, I'll be back on it. So that was one of the reasons for doing it. Also, I decided to really simplify, because I don't have a lot of time, and creating a second pen name is essentially a second business, except it's a third business for me.
Yeah.
So, you know, so for me, it was like, I'm going to pick one, and that's going to be it. And so I have taken the handles on like Instagram and stuff, but I just have a signpost up that says redirect to Sacha Black. And yes, that confuses people, and no, it's probably not ideal, but don't give a fuck. I only have so much time. And that's it. That's the end of it. But in terms of the other reason for TikTok is that I genuinely believe it's a different readership than indies are usually capturing. So indies typically, you know, sell a lot of ebooks, a lot of KU. We don't do a lot in paperbacks. And on launch, my paperbacks outsold my ebooks on day one, which is just unbelievable. It is insane. Yeah. And that was all TikTok. So I really feel like I've captured a different audience there, you know, and I can use traditional like AMS or Facebook to capture everybody else. So yeah, it was kind of like how can we gain other readers?
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. And definitely there are people having huge success with TikTok. So it was probably a smart move on your part, which I'm not surprised by, let's be fair. While we're on TikTok, can we talk about my favorite TikTok post that you've ever done?
No. You bastard.
So talk to me about that, because you know the post that I'm referring to, I think.
I hate you so much right now.
I know, I don't give a fuck. Yeah, talk to me about my favorite TikTok post and where the inspiration came from. Is there going to be more? Like, we want more.
You're such an off. Do you know what I was gifted for my birthday? So this arrived yesterday. What good timing. So for listeners, if you can't hear, I'm holding a Pop Funko that's Wednesday Addams, and my friends had it shipped from Australia. How fucking cool is that? Cool. So I now have a Wednesday Addams on my desk. Okay, so why did I do it? I mean, Wednesday Addams.
Explain what it is.
So I basically, in the TV show Wednesday, there's a scene in this disco where she dances, and you know, I just don't know what went through my mind, to be perfectly honest.
I don't either.
I was just, do you know what? That fucking post has got me so many sales. I literally don't give a shit. Like, I actually don't care.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know what went through my mind. I heard the the sound on TikTok, and I was seeing lots of people using it, and I thought, do you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to throw my books around. And so I did, and that post has had over 10,000 views, like literally 10,000, over 10,000 views, and the amount of comments and stuff I got on there. So yeah, I mean, do you know what? You are going to see another one. I am going to do one for book 2. And I've got a costume, so I'm not even like, I know it's going to be epic. Yeah, I'm going to do it in costume and everything. I can't believe that I'm saying this, but yeah, I have kind of planned out just to rerun it, because why the fuck not?
Right, that is an exclusive right here. Yeah. There's a costume and everything. Fucking hell. Okay, back to the serious stuff. What strategies did you employ to build a reader base for a new pen name before the launch of A Game of Hearts and Heist? And I was wondering if you could speak to this in terms of, like, we hear a lot of shit about it's impossible to start again now. We can't build a reader base. It's 2023. Yeah, what did you do?
That's a lie. So the first thing I did was post consistently on TikTok. My goal was to get over 1,000 followers in the month before my launch. The reason for that is that you can get a link in your bio that you can link out to. I did it in 3 weeks, and I did it I kind of built up speed. So I started by posting once a day, and then towards the launch, I was posting 3 times a day, I would say, probably for a couple of weeks. And they weren't all book posts either. Some were just content. But that was one of the things that I did. My other goal was to give away 100 advanced reader copies, and I did just about get that. I also ran Amazon ads. I connected with other authors in the community. So there were a couple of key authors who were very generous and, sent my book out to their huge mailing lists. And I honestly don't think you can underestimate the networking. I know we all hate to hear it, but it is genuinely true. Like, if you can get an author who's got a huge list, send your book out. And the thing is as well, I'm in a niche where there's not enough content. There isn't. Right. And so, and what that means is the readers are slightly less picky, and they're willing to give, more things a try. A lot of the sapphic adult sapphic fiction is all contemporary, and it's all contemporary romance, but there's like a handful of fantasy books, which means anybody who does like fantasy is desperate for it. But also it means that those who do read contemporary are more likely to give it a go, just because they don't have enough content.
Yeah.
So, and that is why it's even more important to connect with other authors. And, there is a lot of generosity in the sapphic community, a lot of authors helping newer authors come in, because it's been the same group of authors for a really long time. So new blood is helpful to them, because we bring in different marketing tactics, we're bringing in different readers. Anyway, I don't need to wax lyrical. Some of the other things that I did was going into sapphic specific reader groups on Facebook. I found quite a lot of advanced readers, and I found a few places to promote the book. Some got a lot of traction, some didn't really get any. And then the last thing I would say, no, I did 2 other things. The penultimate thing is that I did a pre-order giveaway. And that was like a prize pack, and that was pretty helpful, because every time I would promote the pre-order giveaway, I would get a whole host of pre-orders, people, the emails coming in saying that they've done it, and so that really helped. And the other thing that I did was create 2 reader magnets, one for the back of the book, which is I call my smuttalog, and it's like a bonus see me scene. And then the other one is a prequel, and that has massively helped to, in the first month, I think I had like 400 subscribers from nothing, literally from 0. And so that has really helped to grow a readership quite quickly, both of those, because I'm able to like join reader magnet sharing type groups. And I did one of those on BookFunnel, and so that's really helped. Like, I think anybody can start again this year. Like, don't be afraid to.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think there are a lot of, like, just don't listen to the naysayers. Yeah.
No. Is it hard? Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Is it slow? Yes. But can you do it? Fuck yes.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Completely agree. Related question, actually. So, I mean, I'm interested because obviously you had a established reader base already with the Sacha Black stuff. Did that affect things like your also boughts? Did you find that a lot of Sacha Black readers went and got the book? And how did you cope with that, if it was a thing?
Yeah, so it did happen. My also broughts were really badly affected. And I basically ran targeted AMS ads for about a week, and that sorted them out. It's one of these things that I think if I were to do it again, I would not announce the name until it had launched, and then I would tell people, because your also broughts indicate to Amazon who they should be showing your book to, and Amazon's focus is on conversion to sale, because every time you get a sale, they earn money. So if you're not getting sales because your book's being shown to the wrong people, they're not earning money, which means they're less likely to show your book to people, and so then your ads become ineffective, you don't get any organic juice, so on and so forth. So yeah, I did have a lot of support from my existing community, which was very unexpected, also delightful, and I was super grateful, because what it did was it gave me that little bit of confidence that I needed to really give it a push. So I'm so grateful to everybody who did. I set a really low pre-order goal, and within a couple of days, I no, but I wanted to win, right? So I set a goal I knew I could beat. Well, I didn't know, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
But you guys all who did that all gave me the confidence that I could keep going. So I'm so grateful. But it did fuck up my also bras. But thankfully, somebody in the community was very generous with their time and was like, okay, this is how we're going to fix that. And so I spanked a little bit of money on AMS ads, and I fixed it. And I tell you what, it's the best money I've ever spent, because the book has done very well.
Yeah, half the battle is getting the also boughts right.
Yeah,
it does definitely help. So that I struggle with balancing my time and my resources. We speak about this quite a lot, but how do you, and I know you struggle too, but how do you balance your time and resources between your existing author platform, which is Sasha, obviously, and then Ruby, ensuring that both receive adequate attention?
I don't.
Yeah.
Like, I can't, and this is the wrong day to ask me this question as well, because I've basically had a tantrum about how I can't do everything and I need to quit everything. So today's the wrong day to ask me this. So look, here's the honest truth. I do think my nonfiction has suffered, not drastically. And the reason for that is I have always very consistently published one nonfiction book a year. There's only 1 year I haven't done that, which was 2019. And that was the year that I left my day job.
Right.
So other than 2019, so 2017, 18, 2020, 2021, and 2022, I've published a book. That means the expectation is I publish once every calendar year. So I've got until December to publish a nonfiction book, and I'm not worried about that. I can do that. But what it did, actually, funnily enough, I did think, for a really long time, I've been like, I need to publish 2 nonfiction books a year. I need to publish 2. And actually, I don't think I do, because I've done it so consistently. Like, they've not always been in the same month, but it's come out every year.
Yeah, for you.
And so that actually brought me time, because I realized I could work on the fiction, because I didn't have to get a book out until December. Well, not that I would do it in December, but you know what I mean. There are things that I do that keep the audience engaged. So I keep putting content out. So I have the podcast. That podcast helps to keep the nonfiction alive, because it's my voice. I talk about my work, and therefore it's a opportunity for me to continue promoting the nonfiction. There are other things that I do associated with that, like the masterclasses with Patreon, and I appear on podcasts where other audiences hear about me, and I also speak. So I speak loads. I'm always teaching, sessions and classes, and those things all help to feed into keeping my nonfiction alive. And also, running AMS ads. So like it I'm grateful that I have a backlist. I think if I didn't have a backlist, it would have suffered more. But because of the way that I set it up in only publishing one a year, I actually, until I got to the point that I knew I wanted to write more fiction, I didn't even realize that I had that capacity. The other thing that's helped is that my writing speed has increased, and because of that, I have a lot more flexibility with how and when I write. So in terms of like, how do I balance it? I don't think there is a way to balance it. If you're doing one, the other one suffers. Like that is it. That is the end of it. Non-fiction and fiction are two businesses, and you do have to make a choice. Like, are you willing to let your fiction suffer because you're doing non-fiction? Or, you know, what business is it that you want? It's going to be a very difficult choice. At some point I will have to make the choice, because as a non-fiction author and business owner, it gives me so many sig pennies, like significance, because I want to be on stage speaking. That is a non-fiction business,
and you should be on stage speaking.
Thank you. But the point is that gives me such a high. I don't want to give that bit up.
Yeah.
But every time I work on non-fiction, I can't work on fiction. And so ultimately, we either have to be patient and make sure that we build up these backlists, or we have to structure a business that is designed for the life that we want to lead. Because I think a lot of us make the mistake of designing businesses that aren't actually going to lead us to the end goal. And I was doing that. That was happening to me, which is why I started writing under Ruby Roe, because I needed a thing that was driving towards the goal that I wanted. What was the question? How do you balance?
Balancing, yeah.
And then the other thing, the one last bit, which I am desperately trying to absorb this lesson that I have learned 17 times, is that don't stop marketing your published books. Too often things are dead to me. Like, I'll publish and then I'm done. Like I'll do the launch period and then it's over, and then I don't market it. I don't run sales. Like, I've like very rarely, most of my books, the nonfiction, have never been on sale ever. I think one of them has been on sale because it got a book pub, and that's like it. So that is something that I'm working on this year in order to try and keep things alive, is to bring new readers in with sales. Like, a lot of my books have been out long enough now that I can discount them. And like, that does help to bring in new readers, and cross promoting, like in your books, mentioning your other books inside your books also helps.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
I know that's not really about balance, but it is, because if you can buy yourself the income with the backlist, you're buying yourself the time that you need on the other part of the business. So it's about marketing, but it's also about balance.
Yeah, completely. We've spoken obviously a bit about, you know, the differences with social media, TikTok and stuff, but are there any other different approaches you use to marketing and promotion for Ruby versus Sasha?
Yeah, I started with the marketing. So
for Ruby.
For Ruby.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So Sacha Black is led by her whims and fancies. Like, what is she interested in nerding out about? Well, that's what I'm going to write about, and people are either going to buy it or they're not.
Yeah.
Which is like the most Sasha thing I could say, right?
Yeah.
But then when you go to Ruby, Ruby is deeply and darkly strategic. She looks at the market with a vicious glare and a sword point. Nice. And so I started with the marketing. Like, Ruby is the dark side of me. She's the naughty, saucy bitch, and she is on a mission. And like I genuinely feel like this is what Ruby was all about, was just about me letting my dark side out. Anyway, so the point is that I looked at the market. I started with the market. I looked at what tropes are selling, what books are selling, where are the holes in the market, where can I not find enough books, but there are still people like asking for it on social media, these kinds of things. And then in terms of the approach, I then looked at that and said, okay, well, these tropes are all the popular ones. Here is So a lot of the books that I had read that were sapphic didn't have, unless they were erotica, they didn't have kind of that emotional ferocity that I was looking for, that you often find in straight romance. And so that was what I wanted to read as a queer woman. And so I wanted to use that in the marketing, which is why I sewed it into the story. And then looking at things like using tropes, creating a list of tropes, and like whichever word you want to use. Butter, I think, is what I can't remember her name. The Yellow Book cover. Theodora Taylor, thank you. Yeah, Yellow Book cover.
Yellow Book cover.
I know. You know, the brown book cover. Oh, anyway, so Theodora Taylor, also writing for the id. So I did a lot of research before I started this. I listened to the RWA talk by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I want to say. I read the Universal Tropes book. I read information about tropes. I looked at what romance writers were doing and how they were creating these unput-downable stories. And so I was less precious with the creativity, right? Like I picked key things that I wanted in the story for me, and then I meshed that with what I knew would sell.
Nice. Yeah. And that is, yeah, I hadn't prepared you for this either, but can we address the resistance to writing to market, or writing to reader, as you call it? Because I personally don't see a problem with writing to market, and I'm probably going to get lynched in some corners of the writing community for saying that. But I guess it depends on what your goals are, what your definition of success is. But I can see where writing to market and artistry have their place together. I don't see them as mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I don't think I do either. Here's the thing. When you say writing to market, there's already such bad connotations attached to marketing for creatives, because it's like you're sullying or dirtying your art. But I don't think that that is the case. The way that I'm trying to explain it these days is that writing is about you, the artist and the creator. Writing is all about what you want. But the minute you finish writing, the minute it's all about marketing, that's about the reader and not about you at all as the author. And therefore, like, it's really difficult. But if you want to sell, it is about the customer. Like James Dyson, for example, did 5,026 prototypes, right? Like that's a lot of research. But the point is, he didn't deliver a Hoover that was also a hairdryer and a straightener and a fan, right? Because who the fuck wants that? Nobody wants that. Nobody wants a fucking Hoover that can straighten your hair. Which is what Hoover did the fucking job of hoovering.
That is an image right there.
But
Hoover that straightens your hair.
But who's going to buy that? No one's going to buy that. Exactly. And so he understood what the purchaser wanted. They wanted the best fucking sucking machine ever. And you
wow. Yeah, they did.
Yeah, they did. Quote me. But it's true, right? The whole point was that it had this new like suction cyclone, whatever. And
Sasha just wants that fucking suction cyclone.
I mean, I don't, but some people do. You might.
Some people do. Wow.
Oh, God.
We just got deep.
Oh,
anyway. So wow. Yeah, so they don't want the Hoover.
Let's reel it back. Reel it back. Reel it back to the Hoover. Reel it back to the Hoover. Okay, so the point is he focused in and he delivered the best fucking Hoover he could deliver, right? He delivered the Hoover that everybody wanted, because it would hoover up all the cat fur, the kid crumbs, the mud, the fucking grass, like, you know, the food spillages. It would hoover everything. And this is the problem with writing. There might be 3 people in the world that want a Hoover that also can straighten your hair. Okay, but 3 people is not going to make you a career. It's not going to pay your mortgage. Yeah. And that's not to say that you can't make any money writing these obscurely niche things. But when you look at the market and you look at what is selling, that is indicative of what the market wants, right? And so what is your goal? Is your goal to make money? If so, you need to write to reader. You need to deliver what the reader wants. And I'm sorry, but that isn't what you want as a writer. Always, not always. You know, sometimes we're lucky. Readers are the purchasers, and reader habits and purchase habits are indicative of what will sell. Writing to reader doesn't mean that you're guaranteed to sell, but it makes it more likely.
Okay, so what advice then would you give to authors considering launching a new pen name in today's publishing landscape, and what key steps should they take to give themselves the best chance of a successful launch?
Study the market. I hate to say it, but study your genre. You need to know that genre inside out. You need to know how you can be the same as all the other authors, and you need to know how you can be different. So it might be that you have similar color palettes in your book covers, you have similar imagery, you have similar fonts, but you put a twist on a popular trope that nobody's seen before. It might be that your voice, your writing voice, or your branding is slightly different. Maybe you push the boundary on something. You have to work out how you fit and how you belong and how you are different. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to get the mailing list right. Like, I did not get the mailing list right the first time. But getting the mailing list right is essential, and getting the right reader magnet, because that makes the world of difference. Like, I went from getting like 1 in 1,000 signups to like 30% signups from readers, which is insane. That is a really high conversion rate. That's not normal. But it makes the point that if you can deliver a reader magnet that your readers actually would want, you can build a really big mailing list. Or at least a modest mailing list that is highly engaged. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to, like I talked about, understanding the market, but actually understand what readers want and then include that in the writing. Because, so going back to the last question that you asked about the writing to market, a lot of people think that it doesn't require any art to write to market, but I could not disagree more. I actually think it's difficult to write to market. And the reason I think it's difficult is because we have all of the originality, all of the imagination in our minds, and yet we are having to tailor that and sculpt it around structures and tropes that we may or may not have come up with naturally ourselves. So it's like this process of braiding and threading multiple layers of things in order to deliver what the readers want, but in your unique way. But I do think that is essential if you want to sell. And so whether it be, you know, the alcoholic maverick cop, or the you know, the badass arrogant charming billionaire, it doesn't matter, but it is hard to deliver what a whole swathe of readers want. But it is essential if you want to sell or give yourself the highest chance of selling. There's no guarantees. And in terms of other things, it would be about understanding the long-term mindset. Unless you are a lightning bolt, and let's be honest, it's very unlikely you're going to be a lightning bolt, it takes a backlist. And when I say a backlist, I mean like 2 series, 4 to 5 books in each series before you're going to make any kind of money. And that's, those series are in, you know, genres that sell ultimately, or you're extremely good at marketing, because there are people all the time who do unusual, quirky things and build audiences. Look at the people selling fuckloads on Kickstarter that don't have platforms anywhere else, right? There's people making hundreds of thousands, but they're fucking good at that, right? And so this is the choice that we have. Like, either you're very, very good at marketing. Look at Jenna Moreci, another author who's done everything that everybody tells you not to do.
Yeah, literally.
About writing on YouTube, and yet she's selling her fiction.
Yeah.
Stop looking at the outliers. These people are outliers.
Yeah.
Like, can you replicate that? Yes, if you're fucking funny and good at YouTube and willing to like sacrifice hundreds of hours into building up this huge platform with 300,000 subscribers. Or yes, if you're fucking good at Kickstarter and able to give a month of time for fulfillment and all the rest of it. Like, of course you can. If you're not, stop looking at the outliers, because that's not a business model you can replicate. Look at the business model you want to build. Look at authors who are doing that business model, and then look at how you can replicate it. Because too many of us come in, like for example, looking at a KU rapid release model, and we can only write 1 or 2 books a year. Well, unless you have another skill set that enables you to market that book successfully, then you're not going to be successful. So what I'm trying to say is anybody can be successful in any genre, with any type of marketing, as long as you stick to it and you're good at it, and you push to build the backlist and the longevity that you need. Another great example is Elena Johnson, who it was her 9th series, not 9th book, 9th series, before she had a series that really blew up. Like, that's like however many books, 30, 40 books before she blew up. That's a lot of fucking books to write, and time and effort in marketing. And too many of us write 1 book, write 2 books, write 3 books and give up.
Yeah, it's true. And half of it is perseverance and persistence. Like, how many people do you know that were in the writing industry when you started, even when I started in 2020, and now they're not?
Like, so many. So many. The Alliance of Independent Authors recently did a survey, and there was one graph in particular that just blew my mind. And it was the number of books published. And if you look at Seth Godin and the Dip, have you heard of the Dip? Yeah. So he talks about like career mastery and career trajectory and kind of success levels. And everybody starts out low. We build up quite quickly in terms of like to a plateau. And then we drop down, because there's this period of several years where we go into the dip, where you're doing more and more and more, and things aren't making any more money. And then all of a sudden you get out the other side of the dip, which most people quit in. That is like the highest portion of quitters. And then you explode and you really find the success. And often that's a 10-year trajectory. But what I found fascinating was the comparative data, looking at how many books indie authors had published. And so you had like 1 to 2, like 2 to 5, 5 to 10, so on and so forth. And there was like this rising arch that matched perfectly Seth Godin's Dip. And then you've got 21 to 30 books where it dropped right down to like the lowest percentage of people. And then it shot back up again at 30 books. And what it's showing is loads of people are quitting between 21 and 30 books, because it is grueling on your mindset to have written 21 to 30 books and not seen the success. But then look what happens. And I'm not saying that you're guaranteed success at 30 books. That's not what I'm saying, everyone. The point, it's not really about the number. It's about the trajectory and sticking through and going long term. So I know I've ranted a lot in a roundabout way about like insights and lessons, but honestly, the best thing I can say is to grit and fucking bear it and just keep going.
Yeah. And there's a lot to be said for that. Like, in all walks of life, we often give up too early when success may be just right around the corner.
Yeah.
And how gutted would you be if you could have a crystal ball and see like, oh, well, I gave up and now I'm fucked.
Yeah.
And if I'd have just carried on for like a year or 2 more years.
Yeah. Experiment, fail, try, experiment, fail again, fail better, try, experiment, fail even better, try, experiment, win.
That is the most competition thing you've ever said. Okay, so this is the Write Better Fiction podcast. This is my favorite question, so much so that I ask all my guests, Sacha Black or Ruby Roe, whoever I'm speaking to today, why do you write fiction?
I used to say that I had to, and I do think that that's true, but I haven't been asked this question in a really long time, and I actually think the answer has changed. I think that writing is my way of thinking. I often don't really know what I think until I put the pen on the page. And I don't often give myself the time and space to reflect on things. So like when I do my lessons learned episodes every year, it really is the first time that I've actually stopped and given myself the time to reflect. And so this is like Sasha's answer, probably. It's not, it's also Ruby's, because I kind of thought I wasn't highbrow and, you know, I wasn't, you know, putting symbols in and all that shit, you know, but actually I do think that some part of my writing is about exploration. And, you know, this first book, A Game of Hearts and Heist, is definitely about female rage. Like, is it explicit in the story? No, not really. But it was definitely me. I was angry when I wrote it. And I do think that comes out because you've got two feisty, angry women. And so in a way, like,
and the first line of the book is about angry women.
Yeah, exactly. No, oh my God, I completely forgot that. Yeah, it really is. No, but that's my point, right? Like, it was about me trying to say that angry women are fucking awesome. Yeah. And like, everyone needs to back the fuck off and let people be angry, because anger isn't necessarily a bad emotion. Like, I love it. I love my anger. It's so generative to me. So I think I do actually explore things in my fiction. And I don't think I ever really realized that I did that. I can't always necessarily identify it in advance, but definitely afterwards I can reflect and go, oh yeah, actually that's what I was doing. But the other reasons that I do it is because writing is the most, I mean, apart from an orgasm, writing is like the most joyful thing in the world. I mean, it is though, isn't it? Like, let's be real.
That is a fair assessment.
I'm sorry. I can't believe I just said that. I'm not going to tell my mum I've been on this show.
No, this is disgusting. No, I'm kidding.
Outrageous. But it is, writing is a really joyful experience for me. Like, I want to live a fun life, and writing, when I write for joy, is fun. And so for me, it's about joy now. It's about joy now. And yeah, it's about joy.
That's awesome. Love that. Okay, so can you tell everyone then a little bit more about where they can find you and everything that you do?
So as Sasha, I'm Sasha with a C, which is SACHA Black.co.uk, or you can find me on the Rebel Author podcast. As Ruby Roe, I am Ruby and then Roe, ROE, not rowing. And as Ruby Roe, you can find me on TikTok at Ruby Roe Author, and as Sasha, you can find me on Instagram at Sacha Black Author.
Perfect. Well, thanks for coming on the show, Sasha. That was great.
Thanks for having me.
I hope you enjoyed the interview with Sasha and picked up a ton of actionable tips on how to start a new pen name. And if there's one thing you should take away from this interview, I want it to be this: launching a new pen name and finding a readership is still possible in 2023. I'll repeat that: launching a new pen name and finding a readership is still possible in 2023. Join me next week when I'll be chatting to mystery and thriller author Tom Fowler all about how to write thrillers. Have a great writing week. Thanks for listening to the Write Better Fiction podcast. Remember to hit subscribe on your favorite podcatcher and leave a review, and we'll chat again next time.